Everything has energy. And when you hold on to too much stuff, its energy can have an adverse effect on your energy. Welcome to Health, Harmony, and Happiness with Kathy. I'm your host, Kathy Stricker. I'm a state patrol wife, mama to 3 lively kiddos, a yoga teacher, certified NLP coach, and an energetic rhythms expert. As an energetic rhythms coach, I help action-taking women use their body's rhythms and the moon's cycle to optimize productivity and avoid burnout without letting their desire to remain in control alter their focus. And this podcast is all about doing just that and perhaps a bit more so that you can create your own path to health, harmony, and happiness. So come along with me and may this episode serve as a nudge to discover tools that could help you on your path towards more intentional living. Enjoy the show. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. Today I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Krista Lockwood, and we are going to get to Krista in just a minute. But before we do, we're talking about energy today, as is the case lots of times on this show, I guess. Just realized that I'm going to say that. But everything has energy, right? Like everything has energy, whether it is stuck energy or energy that's flowing and that contributes to flowing through life. Everything we feel and experience around us has energy. And even the things like my desk or the things that are in your room have energy. Inanimate objects completely have energy. And those things tend to contribute to whether we feel stuck or whether we feel like we are flowing in life. And it's honestly the reason why 2 of the energetic rhythms phases involve releasing or getting rid of energy, because it's so crucial. And like we have to sometimes let go of the energy that's keeping us stuck and that's keeping us from actually flowing. As you know, you were designed to move through a cycle of planting, growing, thriving, and harvesting, just like nature. And when any one of those phases is missed, you're likely on the fast track to burnout, or at least living in a constant state of exhaustion, of scattered thinking, and feeling like there's just not enough time. One area of your energetic rhythms that I've found that most people tend to get tripped up on is the letting go of things, right? Both physical and mental and emotional. It is a full moon tomorrow, and it's the first full moon of the new year. And if you've hung out with me for any sort of time, you probably know that full moons are a time for releasing, which also makes it an ideal time to start considering decluttering. Also, we just got through the holiday season, and that probably means if your family is anything like the typical American family, that consumerism was a huge part of your holiday celebrations, which basically means you probably brought in a whole bunch of stuff into your house, and now it's time to figure out where to put all that stuff. Maybe the solution isn't in trying to organize, though, but rather the solution is in getting rid of some of the things that are no longer serving you. And full moons are a beautiful time to start that releasing process. As I mentioned, there are 2 phases that align with releasing, and the full moon is one of the elements that signifies the start of that releasing phase in the lunar cycle. So it's a great time to align your actions with that energy of releasing. So one other way of saying letting go of things is decluttering, right? And that has everything to do with what we're talking about today. Krista is a decluttering expert. I have learned so much from her. And decluttering aligns with the 3rd and 4th phases of your energetic rhythms. And as I said before, everything has energy. contributes to or hinders your flow. Everything has energy, whether it's how the furniture in your room is arranged or the piles of stuff that tend to accumulate around the house or around you. It all has energy. And before I want to touch on this, and Krista, you might be able to elaborate. I don't know. You probably have thoughts on this too, but I'm going to just share. I shared this with someone a few years back, and I think I probably really think she probably thought I was real crazy. But when I mentioned to her that everything has energy, she was like, "What did you mean? Like everything has energy?" And she's a science teacher, so she's asking me this, and I'm like, she's like a science expert, right? Like energy sort of expert. And I said, well, if you have a cabinet that you bought from someplace, it was made out of a living thing. Like if it's real wood, it was made out of a living thing. That tree had energy. Like this is going real woo woo, but that tree had energy, and whoever made that cabinet put energy into it. And the object then holds on to that energy. Whoever's owner that cabinet was before it got to you, like if it was a refinished cabinet or something, had energy. So like furniture definitely can have this energy that it holds and carries with it. And sometimes that's good energy and sometimes that's bad. And I think when we go into a place to buy something like a piece of furniture, I'm using furniture because this was the example that I used with the woman. We kind of get this sense of like, oh, I know that, like that feels good to me, or that doesn't feel good to me. And perhaps a lot of it has to do with the energy that the item has. So that's my kind of woo-woo thoughts on how inanimate objects have energy and why everything has energy. And before we get into that, because that's a deep thing to start on, I'm just going to let that like simmer in your brains. Let's actually get to know who Krista is. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Krista, and what you do.
Yeah. So I am a mom and we've got 5 kids, my husband and I teach moms how to declutter their homes, largely because, I do think that it affects your energy levels. And for a lot of different reasons, right? Sometimes it's like you said, like certain items were made certain ways and so they feel better. But in a home, like if you have way too much stuff, it just blocks up the energy. And you can feel that. And the way that you feel that is because you start to feel overwhelmed. You start to feel stuck. You start looking around at all of your stuff being like, I don't even know what to do. So then you do nothing. Or you go to the other end and you do things all the time and still don't really get anywhere because you have all of this stuff in your space, just like messing with your energetic levels. And so I teach moms how to declutter their homes and clear that space. I don't talk about it in like a very woo-woo way, but I'm always like, I know this is how it works. And so I love when I get to talk about it because it clears up that energy for you in the form of time, in the form of like your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Money, like finances often changes for people. Like once they declutter their spaces, they find like money is a lot easier to deal with, relationships. I think it's the simplest way for people to like recalibrate themselves or like to get back in control or to reduce feelings of like stress, overwhelm, burden, even feelings of like depression or anxiety. If you have that, it does help with those. I'm not saying that it cures a diagnosis, right? But it does alleviate a lot of the feelings that you have just by getting rid of the stuff in your house. And I think that it's a lot easier to start with those things than it is to like jump into something like, well, I guess I need to go like, I think because we're like, well, the solution for feeling distressed, right, is to go to therapy, right? Or to get a medication or whatever it is that people are thinking that the solution is. They jump to that without first addressing like their physical environment, their physical space, which really impacts people. Or, if they're struggling with routines and schedules, they jump to the solution being like a planner or a schedule, completely dismissing again, like the physical environment that really impacts that. If you can simplify your physical environment, then using a planner becomes more doable. Creating routines becomes more doable, right? Just like you're having relationship struggles and you can't even find time to like sit and talk because you're like, well, before we can do that, we have to do the dishes and we have to clean up these messes and I have to pick up the kids' toys and we have laundry tomorrow and I can't find the lunch boxes. And so it's a really practical approach to like problem solving these things in our lives, but it also solves like the underlying like energetic issues of the way that it makes us feel. So it doesn't, I can't say that it solves all of your problems, but it does give you a huge advantage, and it does give you a really big head start into solving those, and alleviates a lot of the problem that you're experiencing with it in the first place.
Man, you just hit on so much right there, like so much. And now we need to pick that apart, because it absolutely has the power to do all that. But don't you think that one of the things that people tend to do when they're feeling some of those like stuck energies or overwhelm or anxiety or worry is like, we tend to also buy more things. Like we think, oh, if I just had this, it'll solve my problem. If I could just move this way because I have, buy this and put this here and reorganize something, it'll just make things better.
Yes. Yeah. They either, it's two different things, but it's like the same underlying vibe, I guess. So yes, they either buy more stuff in the form of like organizational things, or they buy different toys or more clothes. Like they can't find their stuff. And so their solution, instead of finding what they already have, is to go buy more. Or, the classic one, like you mentioned, is buying more bins, buying more shelves, buying an over the door hanger. They're buying more stuff thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But they also, will do more, right? So if they're like, I can't seem to get my house clean, I guess I just need to put more things on my to-do list. I need to have a bigger, more robust cleaning checklist, a bigger, more robust routine and schedule, right? Or I can't seem to work through my emotions, so I guess I just need to like go to therapy harder or read more self-help books, or like listen to more self-help podcasts. And it's like, you don't need more. Like, you don't need to buy more. You don't need to like be trying harder. You don't need to be doing more. Like, the first step is to take some stuff away, right? Remove some stuff. And the physical stuff is the easiest to start with, because it kind of triggers the internal stuff, right? You don't really have to think about how you're feeling. Like, if you, for example, just imagine, or maybe you don't have to imagine, maybe you walk into your house today at the end of the day and you're like instantly met with messes. You're met with like yesterday's messes, yesterday's dishes, piles of laundry, kids' toys everywhere, probably not from just today's activities, right? Probably yesterday's and probably the week before's stuff. And you instantly feel heavier, right? Like, you feel overwhelmed, you feel behind. And so you don't really have to like try to understand that. You just know that you feel that way. And the same is true though, if you go declutter a space, you could just go remove the stuff out of it. Or if you imagine walking into a house or a room or even a spa type setting is easy to understand, you feel relaxed, right? And you have space in your head because you walk into or a hotel room, right? You go stay at a hotel room. You're like, oh, like, I don't have to do a lot here. I can just put the clothes away. Like, we can just hang out. It's simple. It's easy. And you have brain space to think about things. That's why when people go on vacation, they're like excited about life again, because they're like, I can think, I can dream, I can plan, I can relax. Right. And so I think that my hope for telling you that is that you can understand how your physical environment triggers your emotions, and you can use that to your advantage if you can understand it, so that your environment isn't only making you feel these negative things. You can use your environment as for leverage to feel better, right? To give yourself more mental space. So I almost always recommend like people start by decluttering their homes before they dive into trying to process anything heavy, because it's so directly impactful on how you feel. And if you understand that, you can leverage it to make yourself feel better.
And I will say that two things with that. Your environment is like the first level of behavior change, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we always, I don't want to say always, but we tend to want to impact environment first. So like, oh, this isn't working to live in this town. I need to move to a different town, or I need to move to a different house, or our house just isn't big enough. I got to move to a bigger house because we don't have room for all this stuff in it. Right. So like, they want to change their environment that way. We all do. I don't want to say they, like, we all do. We have that natural inclination because environment is the first level, is like the surface level of hitting any sort of behavior change in a behavior change model. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's the most basic, I think. And it's the easiest for us
Yes,
to
that's the word I'm
understand.
looking for. It's the most basic.
Yeah, it's the most basic. And it has such a daily impact, especially as moms. Like if your house is a mess, you're going to feel it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're going to feel it. It's going to trickle throughout the rest of your day. And no matter how many schedules you try to put in place, no matter how many times you try to organize things and label things and shift it around your house, like it's going to come undone and it's going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be an uphill battle. Not to say that you can't do it, because you can, but why not make it like less uphill, right? Less steep.
Right. And one of the things is like, once you start to peel back that layer and eliminate, and this is what I'm hearing you saying, then it starts to uncover the next layer and the next thing to work on. So rather than first just jumping in all in with like, I've got to change myself completely, maybe start with the easy stuff, which is like getting rid of the physical stuff in your house that really maybe you don't have an emotional attachment to in the beginning. And then it starts to reveal more of your inner stuff, your hidden stuff that needs the work on it.
Yes. And as you start to do it, you start to realize how many problems your excess stuff causes, like your clutter. So an example that a lot of people can relate to is you think that you and your spouse doesn't help you enough, right? Like the house is always a mess. Your spouse isn't helping you. Like he doesn't do enough laundry. He doesn't clean up enough. He doesn't help enough with, messes or those kinds of things. And that might be true. But for a lot of people, after they declutter, they're like, oh, like they are helpful, right? In some ways, maybe not always, but the workload in your house is reduced. And so you can actually see that for what it's worth. Like that was true for me. It was like pre-decluttering, we really had like the amount of work it took to maintain our house because of how much stuff we had, like how many kids we had and how much excess our kids had, how much excess clothing they had, excess toys, like 3 bedrooms full of toys, plus a living room. Like it was crazy. It was more work than 2 adults could handle. And so no matter what, like no matter how hard both of us tried and how hard both of us worked, it was never going to be enough. So after we decluttered and it was a manageable amount for one adult was when we were able to actually troubleshoot what was going on with our communication and our relationship. It was like, oh, the dishes aren't actually the problem, but our communication is, right? Like the way that we're prioritizing our time is a problem. So decluttering eliminates or reduces a lot of the issues that you're experiencing in the first place.
So let's talk about the energy of holding on to stuff. So to have all the nooks and crannies and walls of your house filled and with very little white space, what does that do to our psyche? What does that do to our energy?
Well, for me, hold on. Okay, go watch it. For me, it kind of freaked me out at first because I went from always having like a running to-do list in my head, always having something to do, always having a mess to clean up, always having something to like nag my husband and my kids about, always having some, I need to get on Pinterest and find some solution for the toys. I need to organize these better. I need to get caught up on the weekend or whatever. And then when I didn't have that, because our story was kind of dramatic. We moved from Alaska to Florida back in 2013 when we had 3 kids, and we only brought 1 suitcase of stuff each. And so my experience was kind of extreme, but I remember being there and like the kids going to bed at the end of the day after we had worked like 12-hour days and having nothing to do but like sit with our thoughts and like sit with the silence and sit with like how uncomfortable we were with like each other and like just things that we, gaps in our parenting and the ways that we wanted to be like raising our kids. It was like all of a sudden that's all we could focus on because there weren't dishes to do or argue over. There weren't piles of laundry to get caught up on. It was like the weekends were spent with each other, like getting those things done. And then it was like, well, now what do we do? And of course, like with kids, during the day, that looked like going and doing all of the fun things that we wanted to do with them. But then when they went to bed, it was like, oh crap, like, what do we do? Like, I guess we got to talk about, because we have to talk about this stuff because there's nothing in the way. And that was true for like my relationship dynamics with myself and my spouse and my kids. And then it gave me all of this space to be like, I really don't like how I'm feeling. Like I knew, and I think most people do know, that they have a lot of baggage to work through. But especially for moms, it's like, if the dishes and the messes and all of the stuff is in your way, like that's always going to be priority. And so you're always either going to put your bigger internal stuff to the side and say, I'll deal with that whenever I deal with it because I don't have time for it. Or you'll try to multitask and do it, which for me was like, I'll listen to podcasts about like what I should be doing and what I should be journaling about, or I should be meditating or whatever, right? I'll listen to this stuff while I'm doing the laundry or while I'm vacuuming, but not actually doing it. And so it just became even noisier. So yeah, I had a lot of space to actually start making changes and doing things differently and really doing like an internal declutter.
That's beautiful. So the external decluttering leads to the internal decluttering. And I have firsthand experienced this. I'm going to tell my listeners a little bit about how I came upon you, or how I don't know, started with your decluttering program. I have like wanted to be a minimalist for years upon years. And then I'm like, oh, but still like I have all this stuff and I don't want to go that extreme. And, I always, since before we had kids, had embraced this simple living idea with kids, and like I read the book Simple Living with Kids, and like that just rang true to me. Like I didn't want to have all the character stuff. I didn't want to have all the plasticky toys, like all the things just exploding in our house. And we did pretty well with our first kid, the first year of his life. Then, well, how it goes when you have kids, and like people give you stuff and you buy stuff and you think you need this and you think you need that. And like, it just kept on accumulating, but there's always this like need in me to like get rid of stuff, or to not have all the things, and to just want to be more minimalist. And then I came upon you, and like, boom, we're talking like years later, years of living with this. Like, I just feel like I can feel this energy. I don't want all this stuff around me. I don't want all the things. And then like you gave me this beautiful roadmap of how to do this. This is where you start. This is what you do. And it's not overwhelming, and you're not going to become a full-blown minimalist. That's okay. Like granted, you pretty much did. Like moving that far with one suitcase per person blows my mind. And I think it's so crazy and amazing all at the same time that I'm like, whoa. That had to be really hard.
Yeah, I will say this. So like when we did that, I did not know, like I tell people, like decluttering wasn't even a word in my vocabulary. Like it wasn't anything that I would have said in my everyday life. It's not anything that I had like a concept of. I didn't even know what it was. Like even when I talked about like getting rid of all of our stuff, I was just like, we had a garage sale and I just got rid of everything. Right. It was like when I'm like telling my friends and family, as we were doing it, they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, just getting rid of everything. And we're just bringing what fits into our suitcase and the only reason that we did it was for financial reasons. It was more expensive to ship our stuff from Alaska to Florida, And we looked at all like creative options for like getting it there. It was more affordable to just rent a house that was furnished and start over. And so that's what we did. And I didn't know, like I had no idea. And it wasn't until 4 years later when I was in a due date group with some other moms, and we started doing this thing called house tours, where after we had our babies, we're like bored, and all of the moms are like, is anybody else like totally overwhelmed with their house and their messes? And like, so that we did the house tours to like show each other like, yeah, you're not the only one. Right. And I was like, oh, yay, like totally naive, not even realizing like what would happen, which was that when it was my turn to do my house tour, they were like, hey, like we all agreed we would not stage our houses, right? They're like, we had an agreement, like, how is your house like that? Like, and cause I'm like, I didn't clean it before, I didn't stage my house, everybody. And I'm like, I almost felt like I had to like justify it to them. I'm like, no, look, like there's dishes in the sink, right? Like there's laundry in the laundry baskets, right? But it was doing those that I was like, I could see in hindsight, because in those 4 years we had accumulated more stuff than just what was in our suitcases. But, but I was able to see like, oh, like it reminded me of like, oh yeah, I used to live like that. Like that used to be how we lived too. And I'm like, it was only in Alaska, right? I'm like, I haven't felt that way since we left Alaska. And then I was like, oh, I think it's because we decluttered. And then I started getting like Facebook ads for people teaching like how to declutter stuff. And I was like, this is a thing. Like, I didn't know like this was a thing. Like, I guess I can teach people how to do this too.
Because, like I said, I know how to do this. I'm kind of an expert.
I know. I'm like, I think I figured this out by accident. But yeah, I'm like, do you guys want me to show you how to do this? Cause I'm like showing them like, please believe me. Like my kids have toys. I'm not a monster, right? It's just that we have less. Like it's been easy.
I know. Quite honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm the
weirdo.
Yeah. The toy Nazi, or the, like when I'm specific about like Christmas coming up and like I put this thing at the top of our Google Doc that has Christmas ideas on it. And I'm like, here's the thing. We've done all this work. Like we've decluttered a lot. Like I can't tell you the amount of toys that we got rid of within 2 to 3 months after Christmas last year that they just got at Christmas. And they were like, I'm kind of done with that. You can declutter it, Mom. And I'm like, yep.
It'll change.
Awesome.
Yeah. It'll change your perspective for sure. And like, we still get toys from like family and friends. And I try not to make it like a thing where I'm like controlling what people can give us. But, I think because I do what I do and everybody knows what I do, people are like, can we send this to you? And I'm like, send us whatever you want. Right. Like, I'm not going to tell you no, like, but like for us personally, yeah, like what we buy for holidays now is much more intentional and planned and thought out. And like, we think about those things like in February, are they still going to want to play with this? And if the answer is no, we're not going to get it. Right.
Like exactly. And that's just kind of what I allude to at the top of my, this Christmas list. It's not saying, don't give us this, don't give us that, but it's like, here are some ideas, or here's some other general ideas of things that might be good, because we've done a lot of work to create white space in our house. And it's so amazing because my kids now, they literally, like my 8-year-old was he's like literally playing with marbles on the top of a tote.
Yeah.
For the past 4 days.
Yeah.
Like just rolling them around on the top of the tote. You have other toys. You have a marble run you can put together, but on the top of the tote is apparently more fun. So it gives them permission to like be more creative with the simple things that they come up with and that they find in the house, I think.
Yeah. And I'm a Montessori teacher, like by trade is what I am. And a lot of times the argument that moms will make for wanting to keep everything is because they're like, well, I want my kids to like, have opportunities, have variety. Like variety is better. Like, how are they going to learn if they don't have like exposure to all of these different things? And I'm like, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. The opposite is that they need the opportunity, like go deep with their play. And that like might look like, instead of using the marbles in the marble maze, like using the marbles in creative ways. Like that's such to me, a better experience for kids to like take those experiences deeper rather than just getting a hodgepodge mix of a lot of different experiences. And that's a valuable experience for us as adults that kids will really appreciate, because like you and I are in the same like business circle, or at least in one of them that's the same. And I tell people that all the time with like Dana's content is like, get one thing and master it and do it over and over again. And Dan and I are doing a podcast this week on it where I'm like, I teach adults the same thing. Like take what you have, take the foundations of it, and you just have to configure it a little bit differently. Like your son with a marble. It's like, it's just a marble, right? You can still use it the same way. And that's what I teach people in business too, is like, it's all fundamentally the same, but you just have to like play with it and put it together a little bit differently and troubleshoot it And so those are the things that I think about now, like with my kids, are like, how is this going to set them up in adulthood? Like, do I want them addicted to having something new all of the time? Do I want them to have these expectations of like, I'll give them whatever it takes in the moment to entertain them, even though just now on the podcast, that's basically what I was doing.
But no judgment. Sometimes we have to do that for things.
Yes, exactly. There's always exceptions. But for the most part, I'm like, go be fine being bored. Like, I'm not going to buy you. I deliver it more gently, to my kids. I'm like, instead of being like, I'm not going to buy you new things all the time. It's like, well, today we're not going to get that because we're going to spend our money differently, or you already have things like this at home. Like, let's enjoy it. Let's look at it here and we can save it for later, if you really want it down the road. But like 99% of the time, they never remember what it is that they wanted and needed so desperately in the moment.
Yeah, man, you have so much good content and like so much good information that people can like just pull bits and pieces of. Seriously, like just that little bit, it made me think of how you go shopping with a kid. And I've heard you talk numerous times about, trips to the store and going shopping with them, and just how to talk to your kids about why we're not getting all of the new things all the time. And that can be a tricky thing, especially when you have a 3-year-old laying on the floor of Walmart throwing a fit because they want something and it's 3 weeks until Christmas. That was me last week.
Yeah.
Like it's, but you offer all of this in all of your stuff. So I want people to go out and find you. You are at Motherhood Simplified. You have a podcast, you have a group, and then you have this Decluttering Simplified program. You also have other little starter courses too, though. And I am kicking myself because I wanted to get the toys, paper, and clothes one Black Friday sale. Oh. And then I forgot, but I have the Decluttering Simplified, and like, it's spot on, brilliant. And it has changed my life. And quite honestly, I remember this summer messaging you and being like, should I be feeling like I want to do this in my relationship with my husband?
Yeah.
After I've gotten rid of all this stuff. And you're like, yes, you might need to do some exploration around that. And I totally have. So, I mean, like, it just is me saying, like, you get rid of the stuff and it opens up this world of being able to connect and uncover yourself. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're likely already doing the spiritual work. Like, you're starting to do some of that spiritual work that is exploring who you are, some of the icky stuff that tends to come up, so that we can release it. Because releasing is, like I said, 2 phases of your energetic rhythm cycle have to do with releasing and letting go of things and putting things, getting rid of things, clearing things out. Mm-hmm. So it's absolutely necessary work, in my opinion. Yeah. And I love to see that, and I love to hear, I guess, rather, that you like to be reminded that it is like the first level. Like, it is the first level that you can start with that's doable. It doesn't have to be the big, scary self-work. Yeah. It can just be the getting rid of little stuff.
Yeah.
And the big stuff.
Yeah. For people who are like, in your world and the world that I love to be in too, which is like, the energetic side, like the spiritual side, like yoga and meditation, like it's really supportive of those practices, both logistically, but also like, just like giving yourself permission to do it differently or to do it in a way that works for you. Like, for example, like meditation for me is probably never going to be something where I'm just like forcing myself to sit there and meditate. Like, it's always going to be something in motion. And like, that's something that I've learned. And I've talked to like my therapist about this, and I've practiced it. Like, for me, the best form of like a meditation practice is washing my windows, or like hands and knees, like mopping my floor. And I'm like, because I've done like EMDR therapy, and I'm like telling my therapist about it. I'm like, weeding my garden feels like a meditation to me, because that's when my mind is quiet. And I saw a thing the other day that said something along the lines of like, if you work with your mind, like relax through your body, right? And if you work with your body, relax through your mind. And like, for me, as a quadruple Virgo, my brain never stops moving. And so asking me to sit my body still and then have my body still and my brain still is just not going to be something that ever works for me. And so like weeding my garden, I'm like, that works great for me. Like if you guys are watching the podcast, so you can't see like my hands, but I'm like pulling like this. Or if I'm doing windows, like it's the same thing. Like my hands are like doing these like back and forth motions. And if I'm mopping my floor, hands and knees, like it's the same thing, like back and forth motions. And there's even with like EMDR therapy, like there's a lot of science behind that of like, what do they call it? Like the both sides of your brain, like integrating the both sides of your brain.
Yeah.
So it's just given me permission to like not have to feel like I have to follow the rules or I have to like do these practices a certain way.
That's beautiful. And you literally just gave me a great opinion also, because meditation doesn't have to be just sitting still. And I've thought this for years, but I've never like, I don't say it. I never thought of it as being one of my opinions. Again, we're talking a little bit about business in this because I don't know, that just made me think about it, and it's all intertwined. But for years, and the yoga that I've practiced and the yoga that I practice now, or that I teach also, is it's a meditation. I've always thought that yoga can be your meditation. Mm-hmm. It's a moving meditation. And it's for people who have to be feeling like they're doing or busy all the time, right? You can still get to that place of quiet in your mind. Whether you're practicing yoga, whether standing in a stream fishing. I know I have another episode that I talked to my pastor, my former pastor, and he talks about his meditation being standing in a stream, fly fishing, like that can be meditation. Cleaning your windows, cleaning your floors, easily things that you can find your flow and get into your element, and can be that form of meditation that you need to quiet, to feel centered and calm and still. So that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think if you can clear your space, like in your home, and really another like logistical way that this is supportive of you is that as you're decluttering your home, all you're doing is making decisions. So it's also a form of self-advocacy, because you're like setting boundaries on what you will and won't keep. You're being more intentional about the choices that you make, like, which are all really great skills to bring into any area of your life. I totally forgot where I was going with that, but like those logistical things are directly supportive of like your energy and the internal things that you do. Like if you can set a boundary of like how much stuff you'll keep, like your brain is creating a new pathway to creating a boundary and like sticking with it, which will then apply to like creating a boundary with a family member or your spouse or your kids, because it's just like slightly more natural for you to do now because you've practiced it.
You are so right. And that I can relate to yoga also, because another thing that I've always said is that how you move on the mat is how you will move in real life, right? How you respond on the mat is how you respond in real life. So if you're forceful and like too hard on yourself and go too far, you're probably like that in other areas of your life, right? Or it's going to kick you in the end. It's going to beat you in the end. But if you can be compassionate, if you can listen, if you can set those boundaries, then that's probably how you're going to be able to respond in life too. So same thing with decluttering. Like it teaches you those skills so that you can do them to spiritual practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I really think it is. I really think
Absolutely.
it is.
Absolutely. So, I thought of something that I was going to ask you. I don't know.
My brain's not working. I already told you. I'm like, I've got.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all right. So this is going to air when this goes live, it'll be after the new year.
Yeah.
So perhaps it's like a good time also to start something new, right? We always talk about that being a good time to start something new, kind of start with a fresh slate. But maybe that's also the time to start exploring. And we're in the Midwest, like at least I'm in the Midwest. You're in the Midwest too. Like it gets cold outside. There's not much to do. Start decluttering your house. Start getting rid of stuff, right?
Yes. Yes.
Seasonally, it's not what the seasons are doing, but you know what? When you're trapped inside and it's too cold to go outside, there's a project for you.
Heck yeah. Yeah. You're in your house all like a lot more than usual anyway. You might as well take it as an opportunity to get some of it out.
Exactly. Okay. So last two questions, and I ask these to everybody that I interview. How does decluttering and how has this kind of lifestyle that you've developed and led how does it cultivate greater health, harmony, and happiness in your life? And you can keep health, harmony, and happiness like as one lump thing that's, together, or you can separate them out.
Yeah. I think it is, I think it's foundational to like health, harmony, and happiness, just in the way that it frees up your day-to-day life and your day-to-day workload, which naturally feels more harmonious. It just naturally feels harmonious, and it gives you more time and energy to focus on things like your health, whatever that looks like for you. If maybe it's physical, you have more time and energy to cook and exercise and like prioritize staying hydrated and things like that, or you've got more time to actually journal or get into a practice. But it also just opens up more space to feel things like gratitude and happiness, because you're not like looking around all of these things that are subconsciously overwhelming you and bringing you down. Like you just have more space to notice things and feel better. So I really think it's the starting point.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Okay. So what's one thing that you're doing in life right now to invite more intention into your life outside of decluttering, I guess?
Yeah. I am in creation mode. Like I guess probably like recreation mode. There's not a whole lot of like new things in my life, but I have a lot of things that have like really good foundations, like my business. So I'm like recreating a lot of stuff in my business. I'm recreating a lot of like my physical practices, like my fitness. I'm like redoing my fitness stuff. I'm just kind of like bored and uninspired with what I was doing before. And I'm like, I know how to do this. Like I started doing hot yoga, which I love. And yeah, I think just kind of like reconfiguring the things that I have, even like inside of my house, like shifting like organization type stuff, like getting different shelves that work better for us. So yeah, I feel like I'm kind of in like a recreation phase. I don't know if that answered your question, but I like it because I do feel like I finally have good foundations in a lot of areas of my life. And I don't feel like I have to start from scratch every single time, which has been like the last 5 years of having babies and starting a business. I'm like, I can start from like ground 2 instead of ground 0.
Yeah. You're finally getting to that stage with your kids, with the younger of them, the youngest of them, that like there's a little bit more independence. So you have a little bit more of that time. And then there's times when there is no independence, as we were talking about before we started recording, that like, 3-year-olds are 3-year-olds.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I'm decluttering in person again. Like I'm going to people's houses and decluttering with them, which is really fun. So yeah.
Sweet.
Yes.
Sweet. Cool.
We'll travel to declutter.
Okay.
Yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And on that note, I have a link for Decluttering Simplified, and Krista has generously offered up $100 off for my listeners of this awesome program. It's a 4-week program. You don't have to go through it in 4 weeks by any means. But she very clearly outlines steps to take, gives you options. I think that's one of the other beautiful things, is that you're not like straight up one way and that's the only way. Like, does this bring me joy? If not, throw it away. Like, you invite the opportunity to think of things in different ways, and to you give us different options, I guess, on how to decide what's best for you, or how to go about approaching a room, whether it's a room or an area of your kitchen or an area of your house, or whatever it may be. You give options, which is absolutely beautiful. So it's a fantastic program. I'll put a link in the show notes. And is there anything else that you want to share before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you for having me. I'm excited that I could be on your show, because I know I've seen you and watched your stuff for a long time. So thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure having Krista on the show. She is a friend and a colleague, and I have learned so much in my business from her as well. I am definitely glad she's in my life, and I'm glad to share her with you all. Okay, so we know that the stuff that you have around you and that you hold on to, in a way, keeps you feeling safe, because it can be used as armor to protect you from turning inside and bringing your inside out. And that's kind of what we heard from Krista. It all holds energy, whether it is the stuff itself or the way it's arranged in your house. It contributes to whether or not you feel stuck in life or whether or not you can flow in life. And because we experience life in different layers, the first being environment, when you begin to change your environment, it opens up the pathway to changing the next layer, and then the next layer, and then the next. And that ultimately leads to impacting who you are in this life and what you're here for. And that's exactly what Krista was sharing with us. Clearing things out and having white space in your home creates white space in your mind. And that white space leads to you looking at things in a different way, perhaps exploring things that are maybe causing suffering in your life, which sounds a little bit extreme, but that's like a term that we use in yoga also. The goal of yoga is to end suffering through wrong perception. So when we're feeling this discomfort, this unease or dis-ease in our life, it could perhaps be that the very first level you need to begin to explore to change is your environment. And by doing so, you gain the courage and the confidence to deal with some of those more inside things. All of that has to do with what's called the DILT's neurological levels of change. And this is what I couldn't think of when Krista and I were talking a moment ago. But if you want to know a little bit more about that or dig into that, you can just Google DILT's neurological levels of change. And it starts at the base level of your environment and then moves into your behaviors, your abilities, your capabilities, your values and beliefs, and so forth, on up to your identity and your vision. So it's a rather deep thing, but that's what Krista was saying, is that first level, that entry point, is often the environment. And that's like the nudge that will get you to also begin to explore the real things that are maybe causing the feelings of chaos or discomfort or feelings of stuckness in your life. So let's go through some takeaways here today, friends, as far as health, harmony, and happiness goes. And the health takeaway is that by decluttering and clearing out space in your environment, you're impacting your ability to tap into things that will enhance your physical, emotional, and mental health. And that's beautiful. So the easy thing to do is to just start decluttering. And you know what? Krista gives you tools to start that are starting with not the things that you're going to have an emotional attachment to. So it's beautiful. She has a beautiful system. And as far as a takeaway in terms of harmony and how this impacts your harmony, when you honor the releasing phase of your energetic rhythms and you get rid of things that are no longer serving you, you offer up the opportunity for connection in a new or different way, for creating a more harmonious environment instead of one that leads to tension or chaotic feelings because of all the stuff that is around you, which ultimately impacts your happiness, right? And that creates more fulfilling relationships, whether it's with yourself or with others. And those fulfilling relationships then create contentment and happiness in your life. Bringing it all together there, friends. If you enjoyed this episode or any of the other episodes, I would just invite you to share it on social media. Take a screenshot of the podcast, share it, tag me, Karen Yoga Wellness or C Stricker, and or share it in a text or an email to someone who you think might benefit from this. Also, just want to remind you that I will drop a link to Krista's Decluttering Simplified class or program. It's totally flexible. It's not like it's a live class or anything. You get it, you get the materials, you have access to it, and you can work through it at your own pace. It also puts you into a community that provides support where you can ask individual questions too. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful system. But I'll put that link in the show notes. And remember that you do get $100 off of that, making it really, really affordable for what it does in your life. It's truly awesome. But I'll put all that in the show notes so you can look there for them. And in the meantime, I'm Kathy Stricker. You've been listening to the Health, Harmony, and Happiness with Kathy podcast. Cheers to cultivating your own version of health, harmony, and happiness in your life.